This is an informative presentation about the Warrior Transition Unit. I, by all means, invite you to participate, ask me questions as we move along. I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. In the way of risk assessment, it's going to be low if you fall asleep. Don't put your head on the desk. Again, we'll keep this interactive, so it shouldn't be anything but informative for you. And in the event of extreme weather, we'll stay right here for the tornado. If it's a fire, we'll leave out the door. In the event of an active shooter, run, hide, fight. The TLO for today is to define the role and limitations of the Warrior Transition Units. Pass the roster around. Can you sign that?
I'll take that. Hello, Miss Joby. How are you? Let this be a challenge to you to grow and learn and understand God's word and God's ways so that you can share them with them, whether it's about their day night real kids when they get to elementary age or real youth city groups on Sunday nights. Prioritize the house of God. Be faithful. Third, discipline your children in love. I thought I might get an amen from one parent out there. Discipline them in love. Proverbs also says that those who spare the rod of discipline hate their children. But those who love their children care enough to discipline them. Whether you decide to spank your kids or not, I'll leave that up between you and Jesus, okay? But don't spare discipline from your kids. It is our love that helps shape them and form them. But also, don't overdo it. Paul also says, fathers, don't aggravate your children or they'll become discouraged. Okay? So don't press that thumb down so hard that they don't feel your love and your encouragement. Always be a come on, we can do it disciplinarian, not a I told you you wouldn't do it or couldn't do it. But discipline and love. Fourth, lead by example. Lead by example, everybody. That means in your worship, in your serving, in your giving, in your speech, in your conduct. Lead by example. When you do that, listen, I like what Joshua says when he said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You're making that decision for you first. I'm going to lead by example. And as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And finally, today you're doing what Jesus did. When Joseph and Mary brought him to the temple 8 days after he was born, they were trusting Jesus to his heavenly Father. You may be earthly parents, but we know that each one of these kids and all of our kids are ultimately God's children. And so whatever God may have for them, if he has a life of abundance for them, you're going to trust God. And if he has a life of little for them, financially or materialistically, what this world may call, you're going to trust him. If he calls them to be doctors and lawyers, you're going to trust him. And if he calls them to give their life to serve others as a missionary or a pastor, or maybe a service member, you're going to trust him. Whatever God has for them, he's theirs. And you're going to give them to Jesus. That's what you're doing today. You're dedicating them to the Lord. I'm going to ask Kristen if she would just lead us in prayer. And church family, can we just extend a hand towards these part of our family today? And let's all pray together for these little ones. And
Lord, we love you. Thank you so much for these precious gifts that you've given to us, that you've entrusted into our care. Lord, we just thank you, God, for each family that's represented here today. I just pray that you would just cover them, cover these children, Lord. We know that you have made them and created them to be in this world for such a time as this. I pray that they would grow to fear you and to love you with all of their hearts, of the truth, that they would know and understand your word, that they would grow in wisdom and in stature both, and they would grow in favor with God and man. Lord, cover these families, protect them from any sicknesses, any diseases. God, that you would just strengthen them, give them your presence, let your presence fill their home and everything that they say and do. We commit these children today to you, God, and as parents, we stand and say that we will raise them, God, to put you first in everything, Lord, and we know that you have great plans for each one of them, plans to prosper them and not to harm them, plans for a hope and a future. Keep your angels around them, continue to lead and guide. We thank you for what's in store for them, God, and we just know that you're going to use them in a great and mighty way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
looking at the purpose here, the WTO evaluates and treats the wounded, ill, and injured soldiers through a comprehensive, soldier-centric process of medical care, rehabilitation, professional development, and achievement of personal goals. This all falls under the United States Army Medical Command, based in Arlington, Virginia. The Army's Warrior Care and Transition Program started about 2009, and as you'll see in the upcoming slides, it's had a lot of fluctuation. And at the WTU facilities, we've had more, and then the money and funding has been reduced. This is a short little video, so I'm always going to click on the link.
The Army makes training, improving tactics, and designing better equipment a top priority in an effort to reduce the risk of injury to soldiers. But no matter how much we train, revise our tactics, or develop safer equipment, accidents do happen, and casualties may be an inevitable part of warfare. Ironically, for one soldier, getting wounded in combat may actually have saved his life.
I see my injury downrange as a gift from God, blessing in disguise.
After being wounded during an ambush in Afghanistan, Specialist Thomas Bryant was medevac to an Army treatment facility where he was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, and little did I know at the time that I would get cancer. So if I would, stage 2 when they found it. So if I had not gotten wounded downrange, it would have been a matter of time.
His cancer is now in remission after receiving aggressive chemotherapy. Bryant's currently assigned to the Vicenza Warrior Transition Unit, or WTU, where his healing process continues with a focus on healing the injuries he sustained in Afghanistan.
At first, I was avoiding the WTU best I could because I didn't want to leave my unit. And now I really like the soldiers can concentrate on healing. And that's their mission, to heal. So WTU grants them access to any medical facility, make sure they get their appointments on time, make sure there's absolutely no problems and everything's taken care of.
While the primary mission of WTU soldiers is healing, emphasis is put on keeping them productive and giving them a chance to learn new skills.
When they're not getting their therapy or going through the process, we have opened up a number of different job opportunities for them on the installation, working from the garrison.
Part of the healing process is to heal the spirit, and you can only do that by getting away from the medical aspect of your recovery.
I actually asked if I can come here back to my battalion. We worked with my NCOIC here in 1st Battalion, and he said no problem, I'm over here. So I just do odd jobs around, getting anything done, working work for, putting work orders. Me, I'm trying to get back in the game, get back in my own company. They want me back down range for another 2 years because of chemotherapy. I'll make next money.
With the help and support of the Warrior Transition Unit, Bryant's goal of rejoining his company may be within his reach. Robert Sikula, Vicenza, Italy.
So as the starting block mentioned to us earlier, the bottom line of profit loss here. There's a lot of good things that are available about the WTU. We're going to talk about those.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to go through basic training today?
The key point in that was part of the healing process is the spiritual element. I was very encouraged when I did the research here to see the places where the WTU did come in and help out the soldier. I think that holistic health is important. As you'll see, my major concerns we go through here is oftentimes it feels a bit institutionalized. I think what I've seen so far is that these transition units are for people who have either already given up and they don't believe in what's happening anymore, or they're just out of the fight. And if they push through physically through this fight and they don't want to be there, I think that needs to be addressed. And so as I walk through this, it'll become more and more evident of what we're referring to. The Warrior Transition Battalion. So we mentioned that it falls under the headquarters of the in Arlington, Virginia, to treat this like a line unit, I think is a problem. Instead of letting that soldier do the transition into the civilian world where there's camaraderie and an open mesh of network and peers, they're still treating it like it's a line unit. And I think there's several concerns with that. In the WTB with the professional cadre, an integrated Army process that builds on the Army's strengths of unit cohesion and teamwork so that the wounded soldiers can focus on healing before transitioning back to the Army's civilian status. That sounds great. A lot of the verbiage, again, says the right thing. We're going to look a little bit deeper. Does it in fact carry through with what it claims to be able to offer? Within the WTB, wounded, ill, and injured soldiers work with their triad of care, primary care manager, normally a PCP, the physician, the nurse care manager, and the squad leader. Sorry, I still mentioned that he had a very good squad leader, somebody you felt like you could call if you had a question. That's the type of integration that we do need. We've also had that squad leader who's less than what we wanted to strive to be. And so, again, if it's in the WTU unit, that's a good role to have, but there needs to be some type of qualification there. What is their grade? What is their grade, not as in the rank, but what is the grade as in how excellent, how much do they truly care about the soldier? If it's a transient place where they can shuffle through and they're only there for a few weeks and they don't really have soldier care, there's not a relationship there, let's get rid of the line. That's what I'm proposing. As we go forward, we coordinate with the care and other clinical and non-clinical professionals. The clinical word is very sterile, it's very cold. And so the non-clinical element needs to be emphasized. Here's a little bit of controversy. The early number of soldiers in the transition did spike as the commanders began using them as a dumping ground to get soldiers with lesser injuries or behavioral problems off their books as the troops got ready to deploy to the war front. Raise your hand if you have deployed and you felt like there's somebody there just their heart, their mind wasn't into it. Right. We've shared some stories, and unfortunately, one bad apple can ruin the bunch. It's happened to us, and this WTU is not the right place to put a bad soldier. Cool.
Roger.
Cool.
Roger.
All right. One of my favorite fall asleep to television shows is Gotham. It's as you may know, the Batman. And there's the Arkham Asylum. Does anyone recognize this picture on the right? This picture on the right is in southern Indiana. It used to be a mental health institute, also known as Insane Asylum. This is Muscatatuck Urban Training Center. They've repurposed it, but having been through there were beds lined through open bays. Open bay, here, we wouldn't want to have it. Open bay has its own challenges. So what I've seen is previously when somebody was mentally ill, they put them off in a separate area and said, well, we hope you get better. If not, it's almost like a prison. It's almost like one of these situations where if we can't help the crazies, well, let's isolate them. We're going to put somebody with a nice suit and tie to talk pretty words out front. Unfortunately, what really is falling apart. St. Francis Hospital was little more than an insane asylum. System concerns include, according to the report, one soldier in the Fort Bliss program submitted a complaint saying, this is getting to the point where it is more stressful here than it is in a combat situation. More stressful to go through the WTU than it is that shots fired, real world. Other complaints include harassment directed by and at wounded warriors by their leaders. I decided at this point I did not want to dig in deeper. A, I don't like the drama. B, we've already established the fact that if the leadership isn't trustworthy, we need to fix the system. This is when it's mandatory fun day. WTU does not sound like a fun place to be. We'll just carry on. It's not going to be fun, even if it's mandatory fun day. This is a picture of a disco club. You visualize yourself on New Year's Eve, any year, maybe a year where you're partying, having fun out there, and you're out there on the dance floor and it's crowded, a lot of people, and there's a lot of excitement coming in from midnight. Visualize it with me. Army Colonel Chris Toner, who has the Warrior Transition Command, said there are about 3,650 soldiers in the units now. About 66,000 have gone through the treatment centers since they opened in 2007. At the peak, there were 45 units treating over 12,000 soldiers. And so what I visualized it was, the dance floor was packed. Next slide. Eligibility requirements. Because these facilities were too many soldiers, more than they could handle, more than they were built for, they changed the requirements to get in. The WT program at the military treatment facilities, home and abroad, established by the United States Army, focused on providing support to the wounded soldiers who require a minimum of 6 months of rehab care, therapy, or complex medical management. Their success rate was 43%. Being able to get the soldier back into the fight was less than half. Feel free to read this on your own. Yeah, please.
He's talking about a couple of slides where you mentioned about the commanders pushing the soldiers back to those WTU.
Right.
So I'll take for example Fort Bliss. I was stationed there for like 2010 to
Our primo was there.
2012. So basically, you want to put where First Army Division is there. So you have infantry, you have scouts, you have tankers. They have that whole mentality. So you being hurt, it's like they'll tell you drink water, drive home. And that mentality basically scare away soldiers. They don't want to go to WTU. Like for me, when we came back from Afghanistan, we were like 30 of us hurt. Nobody wanted to go to WTU because if you go there, you know what's going to happen. They'll send you not just that, they'll send you to Fenston Brigade, which you can PCS from. And you want to PCS because after Afghanistan, you just want to get the head out of there because what's going to happen next? You're going again. So WTU actually, when you get the brief, they kind of tell you that, hey man, if you come in here and you stay longer, we're gonna kick you out of the army. If you want to get out of the army, what's gonna happen? You're gonna drink water, drive home. So that's another thing that I want to bring up too.
Yeah, I appreciate it. By show of hands, who feels like they should have been through, say, to the E6 or higher level before now? But there was things that got in their way that prevented them. Well, so we understand that going with the flow sometimes is not the right answer, but socially, politically, is what we end up doing. Let's go back. The fact that less than half the personnel, we said 43% of the soldiers going into WTU are even able to stay in the military. Part of what WTU likes to proclaim, and I like to believe that there's validity in the statements, is that those uncombat arms were offered a different MOS. Maybe they can go from 11 Bravo to 25 Bravo and, you know, still utilize the skills. And those elements, I like to see that. There are some good things about WTU that I absolutely want to acknowledge. This is a picture from recently, and real heroes. And partly I say this because it is our friend, it's an Arsenal here. But the other part is the guy who went through, clearly he's not in the military anymore, but he was there to acknowledge what the patriotism meant to himself and for the fallen comrades here. And I think this is where the real heroes are at. This is where, when we remember people who were willing to stay in the fight and push through. Cool. Which goes into what I say is the unseen wound, which is to say 83% of the soldiers in the Wounded Warrior Project right now have a mental, the PTSD. All wounds are not visible. I really like this graph here. A veteran's worst wounds may be the ones you cannot see. 2012, more military deaths by suicide than in combat. More soldiers are taking their own lives than the enemies are taking from us. Military suicides are the highest rate in 10 years. Here's a statistic that really rocks the world. 20% of national suicides are completed by veterans. Sergeant Thompson, you may know this fact off the top of your head. Washington, D.C., we have a lot of politicians, we have a lot of people with free health care, pension for life, homelessness. Do you know off the top of your head what the homelessness rate in D.C. is today, or how many of those are veterans?
I think it's like 128,000 in DC that are homeless, and at least 6% of them are veterans.
1% of the population wear the uniform, or in the military. 6% of them. 6% of the DC homeless are veterans. 20% of all suicides are veterans. Alright, next slide, please. This made me feel good. This is one of the things where it's an intangible, but we saw it Saturday. A few of us, when we were overseas, had a therapy dog come around, and I know when I go home at the end of the day, it's one of those things that brings comfort. In many ways, I feel like this is another hero. I mentioned the WWP, the Wounded Warrior Project. Beyond the WTU, there's multiple agencies that have been able to grow, that have lobbyist support, that have our support, and are making real things happen. And so, I'm going to move on a little bit beyond the WTU and talk about some of these things that I think are excellent for us as additional resources. The PTSD we know is real. We know it can hurt. That being known, beyond the WTU, what are some other resources we have? Project Hero. It's a groundbreaking national nonprofit organization dedicated to help veterans, first responders affected by the PTSD, the TBIs. Next slide. What we saw previously with the colonel was smashing through numbers. He smashed people through these agencies instead of giving the care to each of the soldiers. WWP is connecting with people on an individual basis. Next slide. Cool. It's acknowledging the soldiers and standing up. What I really appreciate about what we have here in this class is that we've had some hardships in here. We've had a buddy, someone commit suicide. We've had deployments. We've had a lot of adversity, a lot of expertise, but we've still been able to come together, and that's what it's about. When we come back here, the Wounded Warrior Program, which is a U.S. Army Wounded Warrior Program, where each soldier is given an advocate. Again, the terminology is a little bit different here. Instead of a first line leader or your PCP, the primary care physician, they have an advocate, somebody on your side of the ring fighting for you. This helps the soldier with the recovery and transition process, foster the soldier's independence. They don't need to have the government putting them up in open bay housing. They're independent. They're able to function in society. Together, the AWT advocates and the soldiers collaborate to set goals for the soldiers and the family's future. Cool?
Roger.
The offering to connect, to serve, and to empower. It's no expense. Veterans ride for free. Programs like the Project Hero Challenge events. It's like resonates. The guy didn't allow adversity challenges to stop him. He found other techniques and tools that help him climb, be on top of the mountain. That last picture is a guy from the Ride to Recovery event, part of Project Hero. Community centers produce positive outcomes at lower cost and reduce drug-based therapies, something we cannot say for the VA. The organization also builds and provides adaptive bikes to physically challenged and injured veterans and first responders. The founder of the Project Hero Institute for Mental Health Support started in 2016. Fortunately, these programs are continuing to grow, and in many ways, these programs are thriving today. Another similar project is the Ride to Recovery. It started when a recreational therapist with a VA thought cyclists or cycling would be an effective alternative for the PTSD and TBIs, as well as the physical injury rehabilitation. I like this quote by Dennis. It says, "The riders will feel the therapeutic effects of cycling and the incredible healing impact, benefits of being in nature that will help them achieve the hope, recovery, and resilience that is a Project Hero's mission." That's something we can get behind. Yeah. Going into the transition, WWP, the Project Hero, these are programs that are happening today, and they're growing based upon the demand. Unfortunately, the WTUs are closing down. Close to my home in Indianapolis on the east side, we have an Eastgate Mall. In that Eastgate Mall, there were Sears. Well, you can't return your crafting tools to that Sears anymore because they closed down. Do we still have the tools? Do we still need the ability to have a warranty on our socket wrench? Yeah. Is it there? No. So, unfortunately, they're not able to sustain the WTUs long term. They've been closing them down, including Fort Gordon, Fort Knox, Fort Leonardwood, Fort Sill, Fort Polk, and many more. Justification to save $352 million. Cool. So I'm wrapping up here. This right here, I want for you and for myself to be the best therapy possible. It's your battle buddies right here in the class, right here around you. Slide. You may have heard the statement, something to the fact that throws before stifle government programs. Yes. Last slide. Any questions? This concludes our WTU brief. Any feedback? I'm really open.
You're saying that they were closing for the transition?
Correct.
Happened the last couple of years?
There's a fluctuation, and what I've seen is kind of like what we do with technology. As they see a demand, they theoretically will be able to reopen WTUs. What I've also seen is that there's a latency. So it's not directly dependent on who needs it. It's based on how many facilities they have, what happens for the budgets, and all the other bureaucracy that happens. As of now, they're reduced them partly because of our pulling out of OEF and other figures. Yeah.
So that literally match of your briefing a few days ago when you was talking about the homeless, and I asked, do DOD is doing everything they need to do for avoid this issue? So and now we can see like they are closing the issue. So the answer is literally no. So and that we are not resolving the issue from the root. So this issue will continue to happen. We continue growing.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate it. And you know, as I looked into this presentation, there's a couple different ways I thought about approaching it. One is, wow, WTU is great. Here's all the great things of what it is technically. And then I thought about it realistically, what we did with the 5K and our attempt to be real with each other, thinking, what else is there? What else is going on? What's the real story? What's happening? So this is my best attempt to illustrate what WTU is, and there's a lot of good things. We will absolutely appreciate what they're trying to do, and also some limitations.
Cool. Just to add to your knowledge of the of the criteria, it's good, very good briefing, especially the way you approached it.
Appreciate it.
In DC, and I think it has a lot to do with a lot what's going on in the presidency right now, because there's a few other facilities around the DMV where I live in Maryland, that has open WTU units and may do new WTU units. I'm actually friends with about 4 WTU units at Fort Belvoir. I volunteer at the USO there. That's right next door to the WTU. So that's why, and I understand the situation, different states go through different things, and it might be terrible there, terrible facilities. This facility is actually pretty grand. It's built like a 4-star hotel.
Good.
And they have complete access to the USO. They have, they kind of like shut down certain classes, like yoga class, for instance. They shut it down just for WTU soldiers. So regular people can't come take the yoga because it's strictly for them. They do massage therapy classes for them. Obviously all this is free of charge. They have a paint room for them to paint out their frustrations and the things they're going through. They do poker nights. So I think it's all based on what state you're in, what base you're at, depending on how well the WTU is run. Because I know a lot of other states are having their budget pulled, and I think that's got a lot to do with the presidency, but I know that's a different topic.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that point. We're almost finished with time, but the hit on that, 2012, when I came back from the deployment, at the 4th floor of the VA, it was very nice. They had a tranquility room, which we waited, and the lady right back out, and she responded. We had one doc mentioned the counselor that was there. I was appreciative. I went into the counselor first few times, kind of telling the story, telling the background. Okay, this is cool. This is really cool. And then I come back in for my monthly counseling. Sorry, Jim's not here anymore. Well, what happened? I look up Jim. Well, he got a pay raise. He moved to somewhere else. And so we have this other therapist. They're actually in training. She's kind of young, but she'll be available at, 2:40 next week. Well, instead of coming back next week in the middle of the afternoon and share with some young aspiring doctor my story, I said, no, thank you. I need to go somewhere else. And it's the continuation of care that I'm addressing right now. We're on LinkedIn, we're Facebook, we're going to see each other again in life. That continuity of care is a critical element. Yes, 18 therapy is cool, but what happens 2-3 years later when the funding for the paint runs out and they're still looking for help?
Glad to do it.
Appreciate it.
You're good.